This day on TFL Bike, we are talking about some of the best and also the worst deals on the motorcycle market.
Yeah, there's a lot of bikes that have been out for a long time that are probably a little overpriced for what they are. And there's a lot of good deals in the motorcycle world too. So what we did is compiled a list of a bunch of different bikes, and for each bike that we think is a bad deal, we kind of matched it with another bike that you can get for the same amount of money that we think is a really good deal.
Yeah, we either matched it with a bike that costs a similar amount of money just to show how many more features you can get for that amount of money, or we compared it to another bike that it competes against, potentially, that costs a lot less. And this first comparison is with the DRZ 400 Supermoto.
Yeah, it's the bike right behind me. We've kind of touched on this. I think it was before we even had the bike channel going. It was on TFL Now, I think, when we were at one of the motorcycle shows. But this is a $7,600 bike. It's a 400cc, 398cc, single-cylinder Supermoto, 33 horsepower. It's got those 17-inch wheels front and back. But man, is this thing old school. The headlight, the dash, everything about it is just way, way old.
Yeah, it's still carbureted. Like you said, it's a 400cc thumper. It's got the screen from a Casio calculator. It's got headlights from the Chevy that replaced the Ford Model T. So it's very old school. In fact, this bike is as old as YouTube.
Yeah, this bike came out in 2005, which is the same year YouTube had its first video uploaded. So pretty crazy. And the bike's it's not like it's gone through certain revisions.
Not really.
They've changed the colorway and maybe made a couple small changes, but it's basically the same exact bike.
So $7,600 for this DRZ 400 SM. By comparison, and granted, a very different motorcycle that nobody would cross-shop, but the Triumph Trident 660, that's an $8,200 bike. So for $600 more, you can get a motorcycle that has 80 horsepower, 47 pound-feet of torque. It's dual overhead cam, inline 3-cylinder. It's also got sequential fuel injection, not a carburetor. It's throttled by wire, so it's got riding modes. It's also got ABS, switchable traction control. It's got a TFT display and a rather good-looking one. It's got LED lights. This is a fully modern motorcycle built by Triumph, who makes bikes with good materials. They pay attention to fit and finish. It's a bigger engine. It's crazy that these bikes are within a couple $100 of each other. And again, not bikes that compete at all. We know that. But the fact that these two are this similar in price, insane.
Yeah, I mean, they don't compete, but they're both street bikes with 17-inch tires. You're going to ride them in the same areas, basically. And neither of us have ridden the Trident 660. I poked my head around one in person. It looks beautiful. But yeah, just crazy that for a $600 price increase, you can get a brand new model that just came out this year. You don't see them all over the road. And it's just it's a tiny little step to go from the DRZ to the Trident.
You get a lot more bike for the money.
All right, so moving on to another bike that we think is a pretty bad deal. And this one's actually electric, comes from Zero. This is the SRF, which is one of their street bikes. It's their naked sport bike, basically. And this goes for $19,495, which in the electric motorcycle world isn't terribly steep. I mean, that's same pretty much pricing as the Livewire. You do get 110 horsepower, 140 foot-pounds of torque, traction control, ABS, drag torque control.
It makes sense. I mean, new technologies, when they come out, they always tend to be more expensive. Think about like when flat screen TVs first came out. Granted, when that happened, you and I were like amoebas. We barely existed as human beings. But every technology, when it first comes out, is really, really expensive. So it's not surprising that the Zero as an electric bike is expensive, nor, like Alex mentioned, is it not competitive against other electric bikes. But when you compare it to something like a 2022 Yamaha MT-09, that's a $9,500 bike. So half the price, and you get an 890cc inline triple. You get 115 horsepower, so 5 more horsepower, a lot less torque.
65 foot-pounds versus the 140, but you can't really compare torque in a gas bike to an electric bike, so we'll skip over
different. But you also get a quick shifter, you get a 6-axis IMU. That's a really, really nice, high-tech, fast bike that you can get for half the money. And if you get the SP version of it, you get KYB and Olin suspension. You also get cruise control, and that's $11,100. So you can get a version of that bike with even more features and a classic, inspiring, wonderful gas-powered engine for so many thousands less.
Still like $8,000 cheaper than the Zero. So yeah, both. I mean, that SP fully loaded with the suspension next to the Zero just screams a killer deal. It's hard to beat that, especially I know the Zero we tested didn't exactly have the highest quality brakes, the highest quality suspension. So, you know, for basically half the price, you can get a really, really solid and just as quick motorcycle, basically.
The other thing that bothers me a bit is that some of these motorcycles, like Zero has this new operating system where you can pay for in-app features. So basically, you can pay extra for things like faster charging. So it's built into your vehicle and its hardware that it can charge faster. You just don't have access to that unless you pay additional money. And that, to me, is unfortunate, because if I buy a vehicle, I want to have full access to everything that it's capable of. I don't want somebody else to be holding the keys to a bedroom in the house that I buy until I pay them extra money. You know, if you own something, you should have full access to it, in my mind.
Yeah, I hope that's not a trend that takes off, because it's not a good one, and it's going to mean trouble for everybody involved, basically. Moving on to scooters. We have a couple scooters on this list, and the first one really isn't popular. I don't think I've ever seen one of these on the road.
I had never heard of it.
It's the Suzuki Bergman 400, which is an $8,500 scooter. It's a 400cc liquid-cooled single, so, you know, it does have a little
Sizable
more power.
scooter.
Sizable scooter. 30 and a half horsepower, 65 miles per gallon. It'll do 95 miles an hour top speed. But it's been around since 2002. It's gone through more revisions than the DRZ has gone through. Most notably in 2014, they really made some big changes to the bike. But the design is old school, and looking at what BMW is doing now just really takes some of the pizzazz out of the Bergman. Not that there was ever much pizzazz in the Bergman.
Probably not. The BMW CEO4 is a cool alternative. This is electric. It is a bit more expensive. It's $11,800. But again, electric is the future. You're going to pay more money for it regardless. It's a way, way cooler design. There is no comparison there. It's also more powerful, 42 horsepower. It's got an 80.6 mile range. It can fast charge from 0 to 80% in 65 minutes, 2.6 seconds from 0 to 31 miles per hour. So it's pretty snappy off the line. And it has basically the same screen that's on the BMW R18, which is a beautiful 10.25 inch TFT that is maybe the best looking screen that we've interacted with on a motorcycle. I'd probably
say that,
be willing to
hands
say
down.
that.
Yeah, I'll say that.
And then again, so that Suzuki Bergman for $8,500, looking back up higher on our list when we started, that Triumph Trident is $8,200. So this Suzuki Bergman is $300 more expensive than that Triumph. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's ridiculous when you look at it like that. And like you said, the design just doesn't compare between the BMW and the Suzuki.
Oh, yeah.
The BMW is one of the coolest looking two-wheeled vehicles I've seen this whole year, or last year, I guess. This year hasn't had many things to see. But yeah, I mean, just the fact that you get that huge dash alone, that to me is worth like $1,500.
That's worth a good bit to me too. I'm not even a big tech guy, but that screen is gorgeous.
Yeah, it's just really cool, and you're not going to have any heads turning your way on the Bergman.
No.
You will have plenty of attention on the CEO4, and we're hoping that we can have some seat time on it. I don't think anybody's actually ridden it yet, but hopefully we'll get the chance.
Not that I've seen. And still, both of those are crazy expensive for scooters, but if you're gonna spend that amount of money on a top dog scooter, which seems like it's more of a thing abroad in Europe, the BMW would be the one to go for. It's easily worth that extra money. Now, this last comparison on our list is an especially fun one.
We had a lot of fun with this one.
Yeah, this was great. So, Ducati, they're like the Ferrari of motorcycle companies, right? We've said that before, and I think it's true. You know, bright red, beautifully made, very special. There's one particular Ducati called the Superleggera V4. And this shocking thing is $100,000. They only made 500 of them. It's 234 horsepower, and it only weighs 335.5 pounds dry weight. So it's a really impressive bike, but nothing is more impressive about it than that price tag. And part of the reason that it costs so much is it has tons of carbon components. Pretty much the whole structure of the bike and the wheels, all carbon. That's really expensive. And then Ducati went through and reworked so much of this motorcycle. Apparently, according to Ducati, 42% of the engine components were redesigned to shave 6.17 pounds from the V4S engine into the Superleggera V4 engine. 6.17 pounds. Redesigning half of the engine components to save 6 pounds, I think you would be better off going on a very minor diet.
Probably.
And probably save somebody a lot of engineering time and effort and save yourself a lot of money. But what's really fun about this price tag is that we went through Ducati's website and picked all of the other Ducatis that we would have for that same amount of money.
Yeah, so let's go through that list. So the first one I went for is the Panigale V4R, because if you're not going to have a Superleggera Panigale, you need to have a Panigale.
Yeah.
And you might as well get the next best one, which is the V4R. 234 horsepower still.
Same.
$40,000. No big deal.
Yeah.
Moving on.
$40,000 is still a crazy amount of money for a bike.
No big deal when you're looking
but
at
it's
it
less
next
than
to the
half.
Superleggera.
Yeah, so, okay, we've got our super fast race bike. How about something adventurous? We went for the $16,795 Desert X that just came out. Such a pretty bike, very retro, has both on-road and off-road capability, crazy suspension with 9 inches of travel, skid plates. Such a cool bike.
Yeah, definitely have to have the adventure kind of dirt bike in there. Then looking at the Ducati Monster, this is my favorite of the batch because we did something fun with it. You actually rode this bike, you thought it was a blast, but the Monster is $12,000 basically, and we're gonna get 2 of them to put in our garage.
Yep.
That way, when you're out riding your Panigale V4R and 2 of your buddies come over, you can put them on the Monsters, send them off on their way.
Yeah, and since, $12,000 is so cheap, you won't even care if your buddies drop them. Just a perfect middleweight,
They're the beater bikes.
little commuter bike. Yeah, just a beater, because it's only 12 grand.
Right. And then, you gotta have something comfortable to put a lot of miles on. Why not go with the V4 Multistrada for $20,000? So that pretty much covers everything. You've got your race/track bike, you've got your adventure bike, you've got your beaters to give
Absolute
your friends
beaters.
throw on the ground.
Yeah.
And then you've got your commuting or highway bike, whatever you want to do with it.
Touring bike, yeah.
Brings the total to $100,780. And that's a little bit more, slightly more than the Superleggera, but if you're spending $100K on a Superleggera,
what's an extra $800?
What's an extra $800? Exactly.
So there you go. How many bikes is that? That's what, 5 motorcycles. You can get 5 Ducatis, including a Panigale with the same power output as a Superleggera V4 for just that one Superleggera V4.
Yeah, so pretty crazy. We could go on and on for another 2 hours probably with this list, telling you what we think are the worst and the best deals in the industry. But we're really curious to hear your thoughts. So let us know down in the comments below what you think is the worst deal in the motorcycle industry right now. It has to be new bikes, nothing used. But let us know. We're super curious.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, this is all, of course, opinion, because what has value to one person might be completely different to the next. So to somebody out there, I guess 500 people, that Ducati Superleggera V4 is worth it because it's a very special motorcycle, the type of thing that only comes along every now and then.
And there's probably the people out there who would much rather have a DRZ than a Trident just because they love how simple it is, and that's what does it for them. So,
but at least to our brains, these were the things that came off as kind of crazy to us. So like Alex said, let us know what you guys think down below.